There's some people joining. Hi, friends. I really am curious if anyone's going to tune into this because it's been quite some time since I actually filmed a live. We'll see how it goes. Hi, friends. I just turned this on and I'm really hoping people tune in, but I know it's been a long time since I actually did a live, so wouldn't be surprised if TikTok doesn't expose it to people, but we'll see. Did anyone watch the blue carpet last night? I've been wanting to talk about it with people all day. Hi, everyone. There's only a handful of us on here right now. I'm assuming people will kind of filter in and out, but we'll see how many people actually join. Oh, sorry, Teresa. I watched it on YouTube and I'm willing, how am I echoing? I wonder how I can fix that. YouTube and I'm willing, how am I echoing? I wonder how I can fix that. I'm willing to bet that the stars you. Let me know if I'm still echoing. Let me know if I'm still echoing. I'll see if I can try the new cast on the carpet and hearing their takes on their characters. I was already getting pretty excited about Blood of My Blood, and now I think I'm just as excited for that show as I am for the season 8 announcement of Outlander, which is kind of crazy. When they first announced the project, I was kind of unsure what to expect, but it's looking... Oh, I'm so sorry, it's echoing. I don't know how to fix that. But it's looking like it's going to be very season 1-esque, which makes me very excited. If anyone has any insight into how I might be able to fix the echoing. Hopefully it's not doing that for everyone, but if so, I'm apologizing ahead of time. Okay, some people are saying it's okay on their side. Anyways, there's only a handful of people on here. Maybe people will continue to filter in, but I took some notes during the carpet, and even if I post this live later, I figured it would be kind of fun to talk about it and see if anyone else wanted to talk about some of the things I jotted down as interesting takeaways. Mainly, I am trying to, in my brain, rectify the fact that the books and the show are so different now, and the way that they're going to handle all of these characters in the Blood of My Blood show is based solely on things that have happened in the Outlander show and not the books, with a little bit of book influence, but for the most part, I think they're going to be tying things directly into the show that might necessarily have not happened in the book series, and that for me is something that is almost difficult to separate because the story kind of blends into one story that I'm trying to keep track of. But there's definitely going to be some overlap, which is exciting. And oh, thank you, Justine. I've been told by people that I could do audiobooks with my voice, and I've never felt that way about my voice, but I'm glad that the soft-spokenness seems to resonate well with people. But thank you for your nice comment. I guess since we're probably going to have people filtering in and out, I'll just kind of go down my list of things that I took notes on last night. about the premiere and some of the things the cast members said. So, by the way, I know that the people who were on the carpet, not everybody got interviewed on the Stars version of the carpet, so I'm sure there's other information out there that I missed. But I went down the list, and one of the things I noticed about the character of Colum, who's played by the actor Seamus, he mentioned that there's going to be a lot of highlight and emphasis on the different political maneuvers that both him and Dougal used, and how they put aside their personal interest in becoming laird in order to better the clan. And for me, I think I've always viewed Colum as being less diabolical and Dougal always came across as the one that was very reactive and unhinged. And it seems like there's going to be a lot of Colum doing some pretty outlandish things too. And that excites me because the older version of Colum that we get, I think he's definitely like the brains behind the operation, but he always seems very in check with his emotions. And this younger version of him, he's really only like 20 years old in this version of the show. So I have to imagine that he's going to be a lot more reactive like Dougal, and that we might get a few examples where you can really see the similarities between the two of them, whereas as adults, I think you mainly see how different they are. So that's something that I thought was kind of exciting to think about. I'm also, the more I'm thinking about this show, the more excited I am about Colum's storyline, just because what we know from the books is so sad for him. And I think there's a lot to kind of work with there in terms of character arc and how it's portrayed on screen and all that things. So that's exciting to me. I don't know if anyone else, hi Misty. I don't know if anyone else is excited about Colum like that, but he's always been kind of like a unspoken, interesting character to me that I'm curious to see how they handle him as a young man. Hi. I also said on one of my recent videos, I did like a little profile about each of the main characters and like where we should be finding them at this point in the show when we start Blood of My Blood. And Colum would have just been married to Letitia in a very calculated move to align him with her clan and strengthen the Mackenzie clan. And then he had a fall shortly after that. He injured his legs and then he doesn't recover from it. And then one time when he gets out of bed, he falls again and hurts his legs again. And that was kind of like when everybody realized that his ailment was something that was a little bit more serious. And so that's another thing that will be really interesting to see. Justine, I really do hope they show that happened when he was so young, mainly because, me too, Teresa, mainly because Ellen nursed him to health a lot when he was injured, and that's how they became so close. And also Ellen would kind of go about her day around the castle and then go back to Colum and like report back to him with things that she saw and heard. And so I think showing his disability is the window to showing how close he and Ellen were, which makes her leaving and getting married to Brian without his approval like that much more heartbreaking for him. So for me, I think they kind of have to show it in order to give him a full character arc. But I'll be curious how they depict it, because they can kind of do it a number of ways. I think where he's younger, a lot of the shots we've seen in the trailer, like he is up and moving, but he's younger, so he's not going to be as in bad a shape, I would say, as the older Colum that we saw in Outlander. But who's to say? I think that's a very exciting thing for me to like see how they choose to handle it, because I think it's going to be a very important storyline. So yeah, Column's what I'm excited about. The other one that I'm really excited about is Ned Gowan. More than I thought I would be excited about Ned Gowan. But the actor Connor McNeil, who plays him, hi everyone that's joining. The actor Connor McNeil that plays young Ned Gowan got me even more excited about him too, just because of what he was kind of touching on, which is that we're going to see how Colum and Dougal are kind of these childish boys that he has now inherited since their father Jacob passed away, and his loyalty was primarily to Jacob, and now he's trying to like take these two explosive people and put them in line, but also not do it in a way where he loses his job or his importance. So that's a lot of exciting stuff to see. Oh my gosh, Kim, I know. I hope we don't see Dougal with Letitia either, because that's just not good. I need to know more about the trailer tease with him and Henry. Yeah, I am real. Like I said, Ned seems to be kind of the glue in this trailer of like, he's going to be with all of the characters from all of the timelines. If Julia is at Castle Yock, then she's going to run into Ned Gowan because he will be there. And then he seems to have many conversations with Henry. So yeah, that's going to be really cool to see on screen. And there's been a lot of people talking about how he might have known when he met Claire in Outlander who she was, because he's going to have had full-on conversations with Henry. So that'll be kind of neat, because the show now has the benefit of kind of hindsight, so they can kind of tailor any of the scenes in Blood of My Blood to fit with what they've already shot for Outlander. And I was recently rewatching the Rent episode when Claire and Ned spend a lot of time together. And there's a lot of moments where you could kind of infer that a look he gives her is something more, now that you can provide that added context. So that will be kind of cool too. And Henry's definitely someone that I'm curious about, because he's traveling back in time, he's traveling forward in time, but he seems to not be there at the same time as Julia, even though they're in the same location talking with the same people. So something happens that puts him in a very different journey than her, but to the same place. So that'll be exciting to kind of see how they choose to approach that with him. But I think him being kind of a very important character with Ned in particular, he seems like he's been around the block with him a while. And he makes some comments about how money makes an enemy of people, and it seems like he's kind of playing the game. I've also seen a lot of people kind of guess that maybe originally he was from that time and traveled forward, and now he's returning back to his own time. I don't know how much I buy into that, but that would be a very interesting way of taking things. And then there's the whole, like, does he talk to Frank in the future side of things? That would be insane. I don't know if I'd love that, but it would be kind of a not unsurprising route that they would take, because Frank is very important in Outlander book 9, and it looks like they're going to show it in the 8th season, but probably not in its full breadth of how involved he is, because they didn't include his letter to Bree in season 7, which I was a little disappointed about, but I think that's probably in large part because Tobias Menzies did not sign back on, but they also could have chosen just to not include that. Who's to say? But yeah, there's a lot of avenues this show could go, which is kind of cool, because for the first time, I have no idea what to expect, because we don't have, a book to base it off of, which is kind of cool. I think that's why a lot of people I've seen that are also like book fans are getting really excited about this show because there's no way of anticipating what's actually going to happen. And we're all blindly guessing and get to watch it unravel together, which is cool. Yeah, I have always had mixed feelings for Frank. For me personally, the thing that I've been thinking about a lot is if when Henry travels to the future, because we know that he does from the trailer, and even that, like, this is the magic, or I guess you could call it magic, of anything on TV. Like, they could have scrubbed the trailer and added that date just to throw us off. It could be false. I don't necessarily think that that's the case, but sometimes they do that, and things that happen in the trailer don't actually end up on screen. But if he were to travel forward in time and have any sort of interaction with Frank, if Frank were to know that he was Claire's father and then go their entire relationship, if Frank were to know that he was Claire's father and then go their entire, like, the level of evil that is inside that man, I just think that would be unforgivable, and also just cheapen everything a little bit almost. Like, the show definitely like tried to make Frank a little bit more redeemable than the books make him out to be, but I don't know, I think that would just be too far. I don't know how big of a payoff that would even feel like. But like, if he researched him and saw him back in time and still didn't tell Claire, like, that just seems cruel. But he is cruel, so I guess that would make sense. The other person I'm excited about is Sam Redford as Dougal, because they seem, him and oh my god, why am I blanking on his name? Graham McTavish. They seem like they have a good rapport with each other, and it's interesting. A lot of the actors said that they didn't purposefully watch the show and they only read the books because they didn't want to like emulate the original actors playing them as adults. And I know that Rory, who's playing Myrta, didn't watch the show on purpose, so his portrayal of him is going to feel like an entirely different human being, which is kind of cool too. How did Frank know so much? I am really holding out hope that one day Diana does write the book about how much Frank knew, but he worked for MI6. He was a part of a lot of stuff that I'm sure like we would never even know the true nature of it, but we know that he knew Roger's father, which is still mind-blowing to me. And I would have to imagine, like, if you've read the books and you know that in book 9, Brianna and Roger bring back the book that Frank wrote, and it's a whole history that includes Jamie in it. He spent so much time that we have no idea about researching for Claire when she went missing, and then obviously researching all through history, probably to find Bree and probably to find Claire, and then obviously to find Jamie, and he does. So there's a lot that he's aware of. He also knew from his connections in MI6 about the Fraser prophecy and that Brianna could potentially be in danger from that. So he definitely knew a lot. Just how much, we'll have to see, and I'll be curious if they include him indirectly in Blood of My Blood somehow, because then that would just add to it. But we'll have to see. I know that in season 8 Tobias isn't actually going to be in the show. He didn't film for it or anything, but from the trailer we can see that his picture is inside as the author of the book that Jamie is reading. So if he shows up again, I think it'll be in that capacity, like a very much like off-screen mention of him, but not actually having him show up on screen, which is sometimes better, I think. Yes, young Mrs. Fitz. Someone commented on one of my videos the other day about Myrta and had forgotten that he was related to Mrs. Fitz. And I think that's one of those like easy to forget facts from the show and the books. So yeah, I think them interacting will be really fun. And she's so fiery as an adult that I'm excited to see how cool she is as a young woman. Because she'll be, I feel like she'll be like a mitigator, and also slightly a gossip. Like she must be watching all of these young, attractive teens and young adults at Leoc, like having crushes on each other and like enjoying it from afar, which I think will be she'll be like a good comedic relief character, which was, the show always needs that. And the actor Rory, who's going to play Myrta, he had some really kind of cool commentary about Myrta that I think, again, like all of the actors that they interviewed gave such thoughtful responses about like how they are portraying them and what their story is going to be about. And it adds so much complexity to the adult versions now that we're going to get to see like how they became the way they became. And he was saying that we're going to be getting like a much younger, happier version of Myrta, who is someone who like has this resilience and joy for life and all these big dreams and aspirations, and he just continues to get like knocked down and get back up and knocked down and get back up. And that's going to be cool because Myrta as an adult, and especially in the books, like Myrta in the show was portrayed, I would say season 1 and 2 were pretty close, but still I think he was more charismatic just because Duncan Lacroix is more charismatic. Myrta in the book sounded like a grumpy old man that was just miserable, and like occasionally Claire would witness him as his true self. But because again the show gives us the ability to watch people when Claire's not paying attention to them, we get to see his personality a little bit more. And one of my favorite details about Outlander, and it's one that I don't think many people notice, but I've always appreciated it, is that the story is told from Claire's point of view exclusively for the entirety of book 1. And in season 1, there's only one episode, I'm pretty sure it's only the one, where our POV is not Claire's and it is Jamie's. And that's after their fight when they're trying to rekindle their relationship. And so when you're watching Outlander at the beginning of the show, we are always kind of following Claire around. So like she doesn't understand the Gaelic, so there's no Gaelic subtitles, and we feel very much like thrust into it with her. And then as the show got bigger and the seasons progressed, we would get scenes that would cut away from Claire and Jamie's story and leave them and their point of view, and it was kind of like that third person view of the storytelling. And that happens in the books as well, is we will leave Claire's first person POV, and then some chapters are in third person, but like narrowing in on a specific character or a group of characters. And the show did that very subtly. So if you weren't paying attention, you would miss the fact that almost everything that's happening is only being seen from like Claire's POV, and we as a viewer have to discern what is like what her interpretation is and make our own interpretation of it, which I think is just brilliant, and such a smart way to adapt a book that's written that way. And I've always really enjoyed that about Outlander. So that's my little tidbit about that. And I'll be curious if this show is shot that way. Like we're not following one main character like we are Claire, but they might make the main character obvious to us, or that it might just be like that whole third person, we're following everyone equally. Or they might only have like Julia's scenes are first person, and then when we go to back in time to the 1700s, it's different. So all those choices are like very subtly informing us as viewers what we're supposed to be feeling and seeing and taking away from a scene. And a lot of times we don't even realize it's happening, and I think that's pretty cool. And yes, body language is very important for character development. I could do an entire live just about the body language on this show and how smart it is, how good they are at filming it, the choices they make. I think, again, like, these younger actors, even if they haven't watched the show, I know some of them have, like, I'll be curious if they pick up any of the body language. I'm sure that Jamie Roy, who's going to be playing Brian Fraser, he has said multiple times that he's watched Sam play Jamie, so I have to imagine that we'll see a lot of Jamie in him. But I'm also curious if, like, Ellen will have body language that reminds us of Jamie. Or, you know, if Julia does, reminds us of Claire. So that'll be cool. Hi, Tiffany. Yes, I'm back. I took a little hiatus. Who else can we talk about? Should we talk about Ellen? Because she seems like a total badass. And Brian. I like that the commentary around Blood of My Blood is that you don't have to have watched Outlander in order to watch this show, because I think hopefully it will get more people interested in the show, the main series again, and the books. But to me, that also is exciting because I think they're going to be going into it with, like, their filming choices with a very similar filming style as season 1. And season 1 was, like, pure magic to me. And I don't think since the characters left Scotland and went to America that we've had that sort of, like, grungy, rugged, just raw feeling in the cinematography as we did when they were in Scotland back in the 1700s. So that's going to be very nice to kind of, like, venture back into that world again in an authentic, like, fresh way. Not repeating what we've already done, but kind of repeating what we've already done. And yes, the Brian and Ellen clip, they have great chemistry. I think they nailed it with the casting. I really haven't seen anyone that I'm like, like, everyone looks great and sounds great, and, like, the cadence that they talk with is very on par with the original actors, and it just seems like everyone's been a really great fit, which is rare but very cool. I think Ellen's character, I saw an interview that Harriet Slater gave where she was saying that, like, she was schooled. She has been educated, and she is very smart and intelligent, and that is something I'm so happy is becoming, like, a big emphasis for her character, because everything that we learn about Ellen through the book series is and I've said this before in other videos, like, it's filtered through Jamie, because anyone talking to Jamie about his mother has their own kind of bias that they're talking about her through. So most people loved Ellen, so they're going to speak about her in a very positive way. And her brothers loved her so much, but then, like, hated his dad for taking her away from them. And so everything we hear about Ellen, unless it's, like, the conversation Claire has with Alec at the stables, is pretty much filtered through Jamie's, like, love of his mom and, like, admiration of her. And one thing that came up time and time again every time she got mentioned was just how much her father Jacob loved her and how close they were. And she was the oldest of all the siblings, so he very much, like, catered to her and loved her arguably more than the other siblings. And that relationship dynamic that the boys had with their father, knowing that they were not the favorite, Ellen was, and her being brought into the fold on all of the, like, clan matters, like, she was very well versed in everything that Jacob was doing. And then later on she does the same thing with Colin. Like, she's probably going to be a puppeteer in the background of all of these epic fights and arguments between Colin and Dougal. And I just think that's so smart to have her be this like fiery, amazing, intelligent person, and then have this like unbelievable romance that sweeps her away from all this drama that she's been a part of her whole life. So that'll be kind of cool to see how they have her character arc proceed. I can't get over the clip of Claire's dad talking to Ned, and then he meets Claire years later. I know. And it's like it's multiple conversations. Because there's one where they're in the Great Hall and they're having a kind of tense conversation where my interpretation of the scene in the hall is that Ned is very much like unsure of Henry and doesn't know what his deal is, because he probably just like shows up and he doesn't have any sort of reputation. He's just like a new person, and Ned's trying to buy his loyalty to the Mackenzie clan, and Henry is resistant to that. And so him being kind of like a shit stirrer in some ways is probably going to make him have a little bit of a target on his back. And then later on, the clip of them kind of sitting beside the fire where they're talking about him finding Julia, that to me is a much more personal conversation. So it implies that they've had like a rapport that has gone over, days or however long it was, where they have at least a friendship close enough where Henry would confide in Ned about Julia. So yeah, they will have spent a lot of time together, and I really think that the show's going to lean heavily into that. And depending on how Henry and Julia choose to identify themselves, like Claire shows up at Leoc and uses her maiden name. So she's trying to protect her identity, and I have to imagine that both her parents did the same thing. So I don't know what the connective tissue will be if Ned realizes that Claire is their daughter. But I would imagine if that's what they're going to do, it'll be something very clever. What are my thoughts on Julia possibly having faith in the 1700s? There's a lot to unpack with the whole faith thing. I really sincerely, genuinely, wholeheartedly hope that the main series does not make the faith storyline kind of like a silly storyline. Like in the books, there's just no question that Faith did not survive. And I think they'd have to do a lot of bending over backwards to make that untrue in a way that doesn't feel cheap. But the concept that Julia went back in time and had a second child that could have been named Faith, and that is kind of the connective tissue, is more plausible, and I think less, I don't know, like, I guess the word I keep thinking of is cheap. Like it seems like it's like a easy way to write it in without taking away from the real Faith, or offending like her character. So I think if they did that, I would be okay with it. I think if they did that, it would make sense. I think they definitely are trying to stir up some conversation about that with the little clip that they showed where she brings up, what was it, like raspberry leaves, helping with women who are pregnant and delivering a baby. So yeah, I think that could be a very likely scenario that they follow through with. And someone commented on one of my videos saying that naming that sister of Claire Faith would just be because she has faith that her and Henry would find each other again. And I think that could make sense too. It seems like if they're going to have 2 seasons of this show, that Julia and Henry are separated from one another for quite some time. So I'm genuinely curious about the pacing, like what they're gonna fit into these first 10 episodes, and like what would be the trickle over, and how much of that involves Julia and Henry, and how much of that involves Julia and Henry, and how they're gonna like stretch their storyline out without it feeling like it's very empty. And I think one of the things that I was interested in hearing lately is that Julia is very instrumental in Brian and Ellen getting together, and she's like a wing woman to Brian. So clearly she's been around Castle Yawk for long enough for them to get married. And in the trailer, it says she arrives in 1714, and in the books we know that Brian and Ellen get married in 1715. So she's there for at least a year, which I think is kind of cool that we know that with some context clues. So that's my thoughts on Faith. I would be okay with that, I think. What does everyone else think about the faith of it all? I think that's going to be a question that haunts us until season 8 arrives. And hopefully it's addressed fairly quickly and they kind of like move on from that. And there's a lot more storyline to wrap up beyond the faith. How do I feel about the shows diverging from the books? Personally, I have no problem with it, and I actually prefer that only because hopefully this comes across, like I'm a huge fan of TV and movies and filmmaking and the process of it, and I think that there's so much work that goes into making a good TV show or making a good movie and a good adaptation from a book. And Diana's books are literally this thick. So they were never going to be the same story, and they've always been diverging from it because they have to. And since we're getting to the point where like this epic story is wrapping up and book 9 is again hundreds of pages thick, I think that it would be very unfair to the show and the book fans if they tried to like cram something that wasn't finished into an ending that felt half-baked, because a lot of storylines that are going to get wrapped up in book 10 have been laid out very differently than the show did, and so there wouldn't be a satisfying way, I think, to wrap those things up nicely in a neat bow and not have it feel rushed and like they were just trying to throw a show together to make us feel like it lined up with the book ending. So I very much have made peace with the fact that the show ending is going to be very different than the book ending. And Diana has said that they did not take anything out of the upcoming book 10 to use for season 8. It's all going to be pulled from book 9. And they'll make an ending with what they have and then choose to, add or take away as they see fit. And for me, that just means we get 2 endings of Outlander. And if I like one more than the other, I'm winning. And if I hate both of them, it is what it is. And if I love both of them, then I'm all the better for that. So I'm fine with it. I think that good storytelling and wrapping it up in a way that makes logical sense is more important to me than them trying to pull things that aren't done together and line it up with something that doesn't, they're past the point of being able to, if that makes sense. Because book 9 is got a lot of stuff that they haven't even touched on in the show. So they should stop the Faith story. Yeah, that was a big deal when that all came out. Like, the way that it was handled, that was an example where I'm saying, like, diverging from the books. Like, that does not happen in the books. And I feel like it was one of their ways where they were like, we are ending this season in a spot that doesn't have a natural break and we need to create one. So we're going to write one and use context that we could take from past episodes of the show to create an ending that feels like it would make sense. I personally feel like it's going to be like a smoke and mirrors situation, but for a lot of people, the damage is kind of done with how they handled it. And the ending of season 7, to me, it more felt like they just needed a way to end season 7 without being on par with like how the end of the book ended. So it wasn't my favorite choice. And I know that a lot of people did feel like it was quite triggering. So yeah, I wasn't thrilled with that choice. narratively speaking. But if, again, they like make the faith of it all be something involving Claire having another sister, that would probably make more sense than what they were implying at the end of season 7, because that just seemed unnecessary to me. Seems like a lot of people agreed with that too. I wonder if any of you all agree with this thought I've had since watching the premiere, the red carpet. I, up until this point, never really felt like Jamie Roy looked that much like Sam Heughan. Even everybody was saying that he looked so much like Sam. And then they posted a picture from the premiere where they're together, and if you like remove Jamie's hair and how black his hair is versus Sam's hair, like they do kind of resemble each other, and I think that's kind of wild, because what are the odds that you're going to find someone that looks like Sam but also can act? Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. What am I most excited about to see play out in Blood of My Blood? I have a few things that I've been mulling over. Yes, Taylor, their voices are very similar. I agree. And Sam and Graham, yeah. Great casting all the way through. What I'm most excited about, I've thought about this for a while, actually, and since they've started dropping more promotional material and I've like fallen back into my Outlander obsession, it's gotten me more and more like curious about what they're going to cover. I never really felt that interested in Claire's parents, because in the books, like there was no question that they just died in a car accident and nothing happened to them, and Diana has been so insistent that that is the case that I never really gave them much stock. And then one time I got asked a question of like, if I were to create a storyline for them, like what would they have been like and what would their story have been? And my thought was that they were pretty on par with like how they're portrayed. Like she would have been like a very women forward person, ahead of her time, very smart and intelligent like Claire. And I thought that Henry was going to be more of like a scholar. I didn't think he was going to be in the military, but I thought he was going to be more of like a scholar, which could still be true. And that they would have connected during the war in some capacity and instantly fallen in love. And their like shared intelligence would have been the thing that they bonded over, and it does seem like that is what's going to be the thing that they bond over, because they first meet exchanging letters during the war and then they meet in person and then fall in love. So that was as far as I thought about them. So I'm really excited to actually have them become like fully fleshed out people. And we know so much about Claire that we can kind of assign different things to her parents that will make Claire make sense. And I think that the casting for both of them is phenomenal. So I really genuinely can't wait to see what they do, because there's no way for me to anticipate it. And that is a first, because I started reading the books after I finished watching season 4 of Outlander. So it's been a long time since I haven't known what's going to happen. And that's kind of cool that I don't with those two characters. I'm also very excited to be back in that very like raw, authentic version of Scotland from season 1 and all the clan dynamics again, which is kind of like a broad answer, but there's going to be a lot of moments like the gathering where Ellen tells off Malcolm Grant or whatever his name is, and no one's ever disclosed like what she says to him to offend him so much before she runs away with Brian. And so I hope they put that on screen, because that would be amazing. And then a lot of the things I'm interested in are actually involving Myrta, and I made a video about that the other day, where there's so many conversations that are had in later books reflecting on Myrta as a young man that we have the opportunity now to actually see play out on screen. And one of them involves Ellen's rosary beads that Jamie gives to William. And where she got them. He has a whole conversation with Jenny in book 9 about it, and Brian ends up becoming very jealous after Ellen was gifted the pearl necklace after their wedding, and so he sells a plot of land to get some money to buy Ellen a gift, because he starts to think that maybe she'll regret marrying him when she still has all these suitors like sending her gifts and things, and Myrta's actually the one that buys the gift for her. And so the rosary beads are from Myrta. We know that the boar tusk bangles are from Myrta, and that is a scene that Diana last night actually confirmed we're going to get, because Myrta is the one that kills this boar, and Colum gives him the tusks, and he has the tusks turned into bracelets that he gives to Ellen. So there's a lot of stuff with Myrta that I'm super excited to see play out on screen. So a lot of things. Yes, Renee, they are pen pals first. She is working in I'm blanking on the name of it, but basically like they were writing letters to men on the front lines during the war, and a lot of them are actually still like available. You can look them up and read them, and they're very, very sad and impactful if you were to. But her and Henry exchanged letters for quite some time during the war before they meet. Redaction office, yes, thank you. so many things from World War I that I've learned and read up on. She's also part of the, I think, what is it called? Suffrage movement. So a woman ahead of her time, for sure. Rory is Diana's favorite, apparently. Yes, I saw that too. I think that will be kind of telling if she loves him that much. When does Blood of My Bread premiere? On the 8th, a week from Friday. Which, by the way, I'm working that entire weekend, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to film my reaction video to 2 episodes. So if they're not up right away, please bear with me, but I will do my best to get them up. And I'm also going to be in Scotland while the show is airing. So hopefully my Stars account will work when I'm actually in Scotland. I can watch it over there. Yes, we do get 2 episodes on the 8th, which is amazing. Do I think Claire's parents really died in a car crash or are stuck in a past? I think if you ask me about the book version of this story, they died, because Diana has said it repeatedly. In the show version, I feel like the car crash is not what sends them back. I think they are 2 separate events. I do think they go back and get stuck, but I don't think it's because of a car crash, if that makes sense. It'll be very kind of funny if they've definitely thrown us for a loop with the scene of the car crash in the trailer, and to me it's like they would have to be crashing into the stone to go through it. It looks like they're kind of splicing scenes to make it seem into the stone to go through it. It looks like they're kind of splicing scenes to make it seem like they get a crash, Julia wanders off, goes through the stones accidentally, and then Henry follows her, which could very well likely be what happens. But the outfit that Julia is wearing when they get in the car crash looks very different than the one that she's wearing when she goes through the stones. So that's why I think it's 2 separate events. You're welcome, Teresa. And yes, it is so soon. I can't wait. It's felt like an eternity since we last had any Outlander content. Even though it really hasn't been that as long as it's been in the past. Maybe somebody has already mentioned this, but wasn't one of Jamie's names in book 3 Jamie Roy? I believe you're right. Yes, I think. He's had so many names. That's something I'll have to look up, actually, now that I'm curious. Renee, I believe they drop at 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is the time zone I am in, I believe. But last year, I think that was what they said, and then I could get it at midnight. So I might be wrong about that. I'll have to double check that, actually. I second guess myself because I don't hear anybody mention the coincidence. Oh, of the name. I second guess myself all the time. Like, before I make any of the videos I post on TikTok, I can't even tell you how many times I fact check my brain because I don't trust it. There's just simply too much information I could get wrong. And I love the Kindle app for that because I can just search what I'm looking for and fact check it quickly, which is good. Jamie Roy was when Claire came back. Amanda, you might be right. I think you're right. I wonder when it was in the books though. Oh, so it's the same. Cool. They did have a lot of names. He had so many alibis and alter egos for a man with so many names. Good memory. Good memory, you guys. It's been a while since I watched that whole season. What's everyone's favorite season? Because I think the only logical answer is 1. I did like season 3 though. And I liked season 5 even though I did not like book 5. Maybe an unpopular opinion. Yeah, season 1's hard to beat. And I think, again, that's why I'm so excited for Blood of My Blood, because it looks exactly like it, and the color grading they're using is the same, and we're going to have the same music from Bear McCreary, and we're just going to be brought right back into the same magical feeling that season 1 gave us. It's hard to beat season 1 of Outlander. I have yet to watch another show that made me feel the way that season 1 of Outlander did. Oh yes, the finale of season 5 was phenomenal. That was one of the most beautiful portrayals of disassociation that I've ever seen on screen. Like, the way that they showcased trauma was very poignant and effective, but also walked that line of not being overdone, but also very relatable. There was just a lot of really smart choices with that whole scene. Also, I know I'm the worst that I started doing the rewatch and then I couldn't keep up with the amount of videos that I had to make because they take me forever to research. But I am determined to continue on with my rewatch videos, no matter how long they take me. What's everyone's thoughts on Lord Lovett, Simon Fraser? Because he's another character. Oh, thank you, Kathleen. If they didn't take me days to research and do, and I didn't work for myself, I think I'd have them all done by now, but they're just very time consuming and life happens, and I'm not good at having a set schedule for them. I wish I was. Yeah, but Simon Fraser, did everyone else really like Tony Curran on the carpet? Thank you, Care. Thank you, Kathleen. That makes it all worth it for me. Like, I could talk about this stuff until I'm blue in the face, and it just means a lot that people take the time to listen to what I have to say and get something out of it. It makes it so worth it. So thank you. Like, anyone who leaves a comment or takes the time to watch my videos, it genuinely means so much to me. Thank you. I do want to talk about Simon Fraser though, because he is actually a real historical figure and a very interesting one at that. And I think that Tony Curran is a great casting for him because he has that villainous, mischievous kind of air to him. And I often think that sometimes the people that are the most charming are the the ones that bully the easiest. Like, the way I mean is, if you have a larger than life personality, you kind of bulldoze everybody else's and you get what you want no matter what, whether you're approaching it in a mean way or a kind way, because people are so intimidated by your kind of larger than life personality that they just kind of like automatically scoot out of the way and let you do what you want. And it seems like that's definitely how Simon Fraser has navigated his entire life. And also just like an angry, mean man that has no regard for anyone else's feelings. Oh, thank you, Tiffany. That's so nice. I appreciate that. But yeah, Simon Fraser, Lord Lovett, real person. He being Tony, mentioned that laughing your head off actually comes from him. I haven't fact checked that yet, but if it's true, which it makes sense, that's insane. If you weren't watching the red carpet last night, or the blue carpet, I should say, Tony Curran was giving a little bit of backstory about how Simon Fraser, Lord Lovett, was a real historical person, and he was the last man to be decapitated on English soil. And he was saying that when it was happening, he was laughing at a bunch of soldiers, and as his head was rolling away, it was still laughing, and that's where laughing your head off comes from. Who knows if that's true? I don't know how through the history books it wouldn't have been altered. But that would be insane if it was. But I think the fact that Brian Fraser comes from this person, and we get to see how horrible of a person he is going to be really interesting. And there's actually a lot of excerpts that are in the Outlander books where Jamie is talking to Claire about Brian, and there's like a number of times where he talks about when he was a young boy and he did something stupid, Brian would punish him, and that he often thinks that it's because of the way that his dad was with him. But then he also has a lot of conversations with Claire where he expresses to her that he feels like his father went out of his way to not be anything like his dad. So I think we're going to get a lot of time with Brian to kind of deep dive into his feelings about his father, and knowing like he's made peace with how horrible of a person his dad is, but he's still a part of him. Like, I would have to imagine when you're growing up in that position where you are a bastard child of a person of power who is also just a terrible human being, that you must fear like some aspects of that father figure are going to show up in you. So I hope they flesh that out, because that's a lot of really juicy stuff to work with. And Brian's mother, her character Davina Porter, is named after the woman who narrates the Outlander audiobooks, and they did cast her, so we will get to see his mother too. Oh, Kathleen, you have heard it. That's so crazy. Sierra, do you mean the relationship between Simon Fraser and Ellen? Because I'm sure it's going to be two fiery redheads going at it. I have a hard time imagining that Ellen would back down to him. Yes. Yeah. There's actually I think it's in book 2, in Dragonfly and Amber, when Jamie and Claire go to visit his grandfather for the first time, and they're like talking about him as they approach the castle. And then also when they are having a conversation with Simon tells Jamie something really mean about his mother, and I'm blanking on like exactly what he says, but he was not nice to her. I'll have to find that and maybe do a video on it, because I remember reading that passage and I was like, oof, that is mean. I really wish I could remember what it is, but he does call out something that he does to Ellen, and I remember thinking at the time I read book 2, like, wow, this man is evil. How long do I think it will last if successful? I think the fact that they greenlit season 2 means that they at least have 2 10-episode seasons worth of content. I have a hard time imagining that it goes beyond that, personally. Because then they'd have to get into, like, young Jamie and all his siblings, and the show would be about them growing up, I guess. And I don't know if that would be, to me, that would be another story altogether. It wouldn't be like part of this one. And I don't know how long they plan on having Claire's parents be involved, because I think the purpose of Blood of My Blood is to kind of like imply that both sets of parents of Jamie and Claire are the reason that Outlander even began. And that is not something that is following the book canon. So I don't know like how much runway they have with that kind of story. Tried to have her kidnapped, I think. That could have been it. Now I feel obligated to look it up. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, I hope it's two seasons of like well thought out planned TV. And they don't try and like make it go beyond that when they haven't thought out the whole story, if that makes sense. If anyone remembers this passage from book 2 that I'm talking about, maybe I can find it on my iPad. But there's so many things in the books that they can pull upon, you know, like conversations that Jamie tells Claire about things that happened when his parents were younger, or like stories he's heard being told about his mother around Leoc that they can actually like show us on screen. Which, you know, there's plenty to pull from, but I also think it's going to be interesting to see how they choose to pace it, because if we're going to have 2 seasons, is it going to be 2 full seasons with both couples, or is it going to be 1 full season with Claire's parents and then what happens to them? You know, like I'm curious where the 10th episode is going to end, and that is the episode that was co-written. That is the episode that was co-written with Diana. So I have faith that it's a good one. Do I think Blood of My Blood is to kind of tie up Outlander? Yes and no. I think it's meant to, obviously, like, Outlander's a very successful show for Starz, and so I think having any sort of like continuation of it, even though the main actors are going to be done playing those characters, is a way to kind of keep our viewership alive for the network. So I think that's part of it, obviously, because everything is, you know, driven by viewership and money. And then the other thing I think is that because this has been in the works for so long, I would have to imagine that the showrunners can take what they want to use in Blood of My Blood and have that help them write the ending of season 8. So in some ways, yes, I think they will use a lot of this to kind of make sense of the loop that they're trying to create. Like them deciding that Ellen, Brian, Julia, and Henry are instrumental in Claire and Jamie meeting should probably pay a big chunk into how they choose to end season 8. So, yes. How do I think the storyline of Claire thinking Faith is alive is going to play out? I touched on this a little bit earlier in the live, but I feel like that was kind of a smoke and mirrors ending because they didn't quite know how to end the finale, and that was like what would get us all talking, and it certainly did. So I don't think that their Faith lived, because I think that would be a great way to piss off a lot of book readers. I think, like many people, I think that they're probably going to have some sort of involvement with Julia, potentially having a sister named Faith, or like, I think Julia's involved in the Faith storyline somehow, because obviously they do have to follow up on the fact that Fanny knew a song that Claire grew up with somehow, and it would make sense if their mother was raised by Julia, and Julia would have taught them the same song that she taught Claire. So that would be like a pretty straightforward, easy way of explaining it that I don't think would cheapen the real faith, which if they make the real faith live, I think that would cheapen it, personally. I'm still over here trying to find this quote about Ellen Mackenzie from book 2. Is Julia a book character? Yes. So Claire, early on in the first book, recalls her parents, and she's brought them up to Jamie. Like when they're courting and they have their wedding, there's a whole conversation that the show kind of did like a montage, and they didn't include all the dialogue from, but Jamie kind of lays out his whole story of his mom and how him and his mom eloped, like essentially the story of Blood of My Blood. He explains to her that night, and Claire tells Jamie about her parents, but omits obviously that they died in a car crash. But we're in Claire's head for much of this story and most of the books, and so she remembers things about them, like mentions them, but only to the extent of her saying that they died when she was 5, and then she was with her Uncle Lamb as she grew up, and he tried to send her away to school, and she said no. Oh, thank you, April. So yeah, the fact that we're going to get to see Uncle Lamb as well is going to be interesting, because some people are saying like maybe he knew that they time traveled. He's a smart man. That would be kind of crazy and cool. But he raised her, so she was so young that she doesn't remember much about her parents. So in the books, they're really just mentioned. They're not really elaborated on, because she, as an adult, doesn't have anything to remember them by, essentially. And Diana has said many times that she doesn't plan to. Yeah, I've been looking for a casting announcement of Uncle Liam. I'm wondering if he might be a season 2 thing. April, it's been confirmed in the Blood of My Blood trailer that they were time travelers, both of them. Yes. So we will get to see them back in time in Blood of My Blood. Which, curiously, the showrunner, Matt Roberts, at the carpet last night said that he was trying to keep that a secret, and Starz encouraged him to reveal that, and he wasn't sure about how that would go over, and then they did, and it went over better than he thought. I was personally surprised that they let that secret up too, but I think it makes sense from a marketing standpoint that they would do that. I don't know if it was the right decision, but it does make sense that they chose to let it be very obvious to us before the show premiered that her parents both time travel. And also, it does make sense narratively for the books, because as we've seen with Jemmy and Mandy, they are the children of 2 time traveling parents, and so they have amplified powers, and Claire has very, very strong healing powers, and so it would make sense that that's because she has 2 parents that have the gene. I think people who watch just the show forget, or don't realize rather, how much more magic is actually in the books. The show kind of downplays it a lot, or doesn't include as much of it, I should say, which is frustrating, but I get it. Yes, April, Captain Richardson is a time traveler. I did a few videos on that during season 7 about his character and his arc in the books, and how it's different in the show, but close enough that I think they're following it, and probably will follow it in season 8. Same with Lord John. They're going to have to like shrink his storyline down, but they seem to be following the Lord John storyline too. Captain Richardson is a character I haven't thought about in a while. It's so crazy, like how if you read the books, everything just melds together and you have to kind of like actively think what's book and what's show. Because some of it, I trip myself up sometimes. I had thought I had highlighted this quote from book 2 about Ellen, and I can't find it, but I did just find a quote from Myrta telling Jamie that he had knelt at Ellen's feet and swore to her that he would follow him always and do his bidding and guard your back. And that is a scene that I really hope they include in Blood of My Blood. Like, I hope it's probably going to be in season 2 because Jamie's not their firstborn child, but I would really love to see that scene of Myrta giving his oath to Ellen. We haven't talked about Jocasta Taylor. Yes, they look just alike. I think that's a great casting too. Jocasta's a character that, again, like in the books, she's not mentioned a lot. She's just kind of like secondhand mentioned. So we don't know a lot about her other than she was married off very young to a Cameron of the North. And she's actually supposed to be, if we're following like book ages and timelines, she would be very young in Blood of My Blood. And I think they aged her up because they're trying to play out on the romance that Myrta and her have later on in the show, which does not happen in the books because Myrta dies at the Battle of Culloden in the books. So she's going to be like a brand new perspective too, because we don't know a lot about Jocasta as a child other than she was very young when she was married off. She had many husbands, and yeah, we really don't hear about her until we talk about the French gold. Which scene from the show do I think they did a really good job portraying from the books? Ooh, a lot of them. That's so hard to pick. There's been a lot that have been pretty close, like dialogue wise, like almost exactly the same dialogue. The most accurate, I would say, like book to screen is season 1. Like most of the scenes in season 1 are pulled directly out of the book. So I would say like hard for me to pull one scene from season 1 because they're all pretty close to the books. But the most recent one I would say is in season 7. There's a conversation between Jamie and Claire where the two of them are reflecting on all the trauma that they've gone through, and Jamie kind of tells Claire like to cry for all the people that they've lost and are missing, because at that point their family is very fractured and Brianna and Roger have gone back to the future and they're alone again. And I think even though they kind of rearranged the dialogue of that scene, the emotion of it was like perfect. And I think I remember reading that scene in the book and feeling just so heartbroken for Claire. And when you watched it in the show, it was just so poignant. And I think both of the actors did a really beautiful job, like without saying so much, showcasing what Claire felt like. And it's a feeling that we can't relate to because we cannot put ourselves in a position where like you are separated by time from a family member other than death, and that's the metaphor that they're making. And yeah, I just felt like the book scene was so poignant that I was very happy that the show scene matched the level of intensity. Do we think we will see Master Raymond in Blood of My Blood? I haven't thought about this fully, but I did think about it the other day, and I think that we might not see him directly, but we might get like an off-screen mention of him somehow. I don't know that, like when he showed up in season 7, it was kind of jarring to me to see the actor there. But I think if we like had Easter eggs implying that he was there, or, you know, puppeteering things, that would be almost more impactful for me. So I do hope like someone refers to someone that we can put two and two together and we realize that it's him. Because he is supposed to be kind of steering the ship of how the whole storyline plays out. And so if the argument is that Claire and Jamie's parents like start the whole loop of their story, then I have to imagine that he would be involved somehow. So yeah, I don't think physically on screen, but hopefully like a mention that we can have that kind of like light bulb moment of, oh, that's how he's involved. And I think that would be easy for them to do. They've done it with Frank in recent seasons too. Like he's not showing up on screen, but he's still impacting what we're seeing on screen, just through like narrative choices. And he will in season 8 through the book that he wrote that we can see Jamie reading in the trailer. Do you think the watch can control time? I think it's Henry's watch. And Henry is such a big question mark for me that I wouldn't be surprised if it had something to do with like him. I think Henry is smarter than the trailer is implying. I've always felt like, and this is based solely just on like my understanding of Claire, I've always felt like Henry would be a very studious, intelligent, smart person, probably akin to Frank's level of intelligence. And Frank was a historian who I think was highly intelligent as well. And so if Henry is being put into this situation where he's trying to find his wife, I think that he would research every avenue possible to figure out how to understand time travel, similar to how Brianna and Roger and Claire have all started making their book. I think that he would probably be researching it somehow. And so if like that was his watch and like maybe it was a gift or something, like I think it must have some significance for him and have some sort of tie to his wife and like finding her again. So I don't know if like it would make him time travel, because the only thing we know is capable of that is traveling through the stones. But I do think that he would probably find symbolism in like, we know like him discovering that you need an anchor and like what could I use as an anchor. Like I think there's going to be a lot more being fleshed out through Henry about how time travel works. And obviously like the trailer for Blood of My Blood and Outlander has the symbolism of a clock. Like in the Outlander trailer, you can see a clock striking 60. So I think in many ways when they're composing these trailers, they're just kind of like, they put the subtle like ticking noise in the background, and there's just this big emphasis on like time because the show is about time travel. But I would think that Henry is probably going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how time travel works, and that watch is probably like it was his, or it will be his, or it has some connection between him and Julia somehow, is how I feel. Taylor, it did look like a woman's hand holding it. When I took the screenshot, I felt like it must have been Julia's. But I feel like I didn't catch, and I'd have to go through, but I didn't catch her wearing a watch in any of her clips. Yeah, I could go back and look for that. That's a curious thought. But Henry's a big question mark that I'm excited about. I think he's going to be a lot more important than we realize. And I also think us knowing that Ellen and Julia spend so much time together just because of what the actors are saying, if Julia in any way, shape, or form lets it slip that her maiden name is indirectly, or her married name, sorry, is indirectly tied to Claire's, there's no way that people at Leoc would not put two and two together that she is related to them. Do I think Henry will time jump forward and meet current Jamie and Claire? I don't think Henry would meet Jamie because Jamie is not a time traveler, as far as we know. Claire, I'm almost positive that, and someone can fact check me on this, I'm almost positive that if the dates that were behind Henry on the trailer are accurate, then when he comes back, may or may not fall within the timeline that Claire has gone back in time. So she wouldn't be there, but Frank would. And that's why people think that he probably meets Frank. I've heard that she maybe used the last name Beaton because it's their last names together. I've also seen a lot of people talking about that and how the previous caretaker at Leoc had the last name, and how that could be some people think Henry was the one that was working there before Claire and that he could have been a healer. There's just so many ways they could involve them. Jamie wouldn't need to be a traveler for Henry to go to his... Oh, you mean go to somewhere further in the 1700s. I thought you meant the shot when he's clearly there after one of the world wars. Potentially. Yeah. That could be a possibility. That would be crazy if she met her dad and didn't even realize it, and he met his daughter and didn't even realize it. And that's what Mrs. Fitz asked Claire when she first showed up. I might have missed. Oh yeah, Beaton, yeah. I love that scene. But again, this is where Blood of My Blood has all these opportunities to pay off things that don't have legs in the book series because Diana is not going to write about them. So they can make these connections that feel very well thought out, even though they're kind of coincidentals, but they can make them feel very well thought out now, which is very cool. Sam being in Blood of My Blood, I kind of hope he's not, personally. You're Jamie Fraser, and you're an Outlander character. I don't know. I don't need him to be there for Blood of My Blood to be a good show. I would get how he would want to, but it would feel very much like Graham McTavish playing his own son as an old man, and then they recast him. I just don't feel like it needs to happen. But yeah, I'm sure he would get involved if he wanted to, and they'd let him. I feel like him and Claire will be in the last episode, and it will explain Faith. I feel like Katrina would not want to do that, and that's the only reason why I'm going to say I don't think that will happen. But again, it might be an off-screen thing. Something might happen where it implies that, and it will connect back to season 8 without it physically being them on screen. But yeah, that's what I mean. It's so exciting that we can all come up with these crazy fan theories, because genuinely there's no way to know what they're going to do with it, and it must be so fun for all the actors and the showrunners to watch everybody guess and see how far off we are, because I'm sure we're very far off on a lot of things. Yeah, they definitely needed a cliffhanger for 7, and I think that's why they reached for the Faith thing. And I hope that they get rid of it in the first episode, or at least by episode 3, because there's so many other things going on that they need to cover. And the Faith of it all is not one that I feel needs that much screen time. Why do I think Diana doesn't want to write about Claire's parents? I feel like Diana, from what I gather on reading her posts and seeing her interviews, is that she's a very literal thinker. And so when she started writing Outlander, the story is Claire's story. It's everything is just Claire's POV. And then as she started writing more books, she like, it grew, and she would allow some chapters to be like the third person version of other characters, but at the heart of everything, it's Claire's story. And I think that in her head, when she wrote the first book, she was very much like, this is Claire's upbringing. She had parents, they died. She didn't know anything about them because she was 5 years old, and she was raised by her uncle. And anything she knows about her parents would be learned through her uncle. And I think like that's what she wrote the whole story with, that headspace. And so for her now, she probably just has no reason to elaborate on it because she spent so long writing from that angle that it doesn't seem like a necessary angle for her to expand upon. And I can respect that. I think that she's a brilliant writer, and there must be like a very clear reason why she doesn't think it's worth her writing about them. And so she's allowed. And now we get another interpretation, and she gave it the green light. So I think that means that for what it's worth, she finds the storytelling that they're going to play out on screen interesting and good TV. And so I trust that. I hope you're right about like the explain faith and move on thing. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how Claire and Jamie would get that information in their current time any other way. Like, there's no other character that's in that time with them that would have like harbored this secret and then like suddenly told them. It would have to be someone showing up, and maybe that's Master Raymond again. I don't know. Or it's either that, or there's going to be a context clue where Claire figures out that her mother did live and was back in time, and is able to kind of like piece that together without it being a conversation between her and her mother and father. I would think that would probably be the way they would do it, especially if like filming scheduling wise, like Katrina probably did not film anything while they were shooting Blood of My Blood, just based on the movies she was in, but I could be very wrong. I've been wrong about a lot. Yeah, if it's Henry, that would make sense too. I'll be curious if there's any character crossover between, like, to me it makes more sense if a Blood of My Blood character jumped to the main series than someone from the main series being in Blood of My Blood. So that could make sense. I've also seen people talking about how they don't know if Henry is in season 2 because they're looking at like the cast that's back on set for, they've already started shooting it, but he just had, I think, twins. So I'm assuming that would be why he's not back on set yet. I don't think it's because Henry's not part of season 2. So we'll have to see how much behind the scenes stuff we get, because they're shooting now, and hopefully it won't spoil too much. But yeah, I don't think he's not going to be part of season 2. It would just feel weird if they just like got rid of one of the characters, but the rest of them are still there. Yeah. So many thoughts is right. This is how my brain works on a daily basis, and that's why it's nice to have an outlet to talk about it with people. Henry is Claire's father. Henry Beecham. Do I think William and Jane will be related in Outlander, given they were intimate? I mean, it kind of looks that way. Yeah. It wouldn't be the first time, like, very distantly, Roger and Brianna are related. So it wouldn't be the first time. But the way that they were like insinuating things in the finale, it set it up like very weird, close relation. And I was like, not for me. But yeah, Brat just said it wouldn't have been weird in those days, but it would be for us in this time. Like, that's accurate. But I also think like William as a character, for some reason, I just feel like he would find it weird anyway. But William, if they follow the books, he's going to have an interesting time in season 8. So this would have just added like another layer of trauma for him if that ends up being the case. But yeah, I think if they end up being, and this is when I'm like, I need a family tree. So if they end up being Claire's nieces, then Jamie's bloodline would not be involved at all, and we wouldn't have this issue. David and Charles said at Supernova they think their characters have the best ending. Really? That's interesting about David, just given what the storyline is in book 9. So they must be changing it quite a bit. But I hope that that's true because they both deserve it. I know a lot of people hate William. I really disliked him in the books, but I think Charles did a wonderful job with him in the show because I actually really like him in the show. Not so much in the fact that I like William as a character, but I really like Charles's depiction of William because he maintains a lot of the bratty aspects of him, but he gives him a lot more depth, I would say. Oh, and in episode 9, their story, this makes me so emotional to think that, like, we'll just have the end of their characters. Do I think Claire is a descendant of Fergus? I do think that has legs, yes. I've long thought that. I don't think that there would be that much time dedicated to talking about it in the books if that was not something that was plausible and real, which is kind of crazy. But the way that it's been explained in the books is like there's these 2 points, Fergus, Claire, and then all of the middle where they're related. Like, we don't know anything about that family tree because we don't know Claire's family tree. So could be interesting if we get some more elaboration on that in Blood of My Blood, because they have the opportunity to. And I really, really hope we get more Fergus in season 8 because it was kind of criminal how little of him we got. And Marcelly. Do I think it will be a happy ending? Yeah, I think it has to be. I do. I do think it has to be. I think it would be criminal if they ended 8 seasons of a show with people being upset. But I also think this is like a show similar to Game of Thrones where you are ahead of the books now and they had to write their own ending. And I don't think realistically the ending is going to feel as fully fleshed out as it probably should be, just because it cannot be, because they've started storylines and will now have to wrap up storylines in a very short amount of time. But I think that at the heart of everything that the books and the show is about is a love story between Claire and Jamie. And I think that it ends with that being a love story that's going to be continuous somehow. And there's hope in that, you know, like if they're not together in this lifetime, they will be in another. Like that to me would be a happy ending. And yes, them talking about Jamie's death in the preview does not solidify that he won't die. If you've read the books, then you know what I am talking about. Do I think it will be similar to the eventual book ending? No, because Diana has said that they did not take anything out of book 10 to write the finale of the show. So I think it's going to be very much like their own interpretation of things. And then Diana's going to have her own interpretation that's going to be much broader, have a lot more information. The books have a lot more like subplots that the show hasn't included. So I just think like her ending is going to have so much more breadth to it that the show just can't emulate. But I feel like they're probably going to be close to like the sentiment of the ending of the book, if that makes sense. But yeah, book 9 is a book that I really feel like if you aren't a book reader, season 8's going to hit differently, or like going into it is going to hit differently, because there's so many things that happen in book 9 that they're probably going to pull from, and the one that's in the trailer is one of the biggest things that happens in book 9, and it's just so important. And I'm almost jealous of people who don't know what's going to happen, because I think it's going to be shocking. If I could see any other spin-off series, what would I want to see the most? I have always said that I would have loved if they did the Lord John spin-off series, because his novellas are so fun, and I love his character. He's one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite. And I really, like, I know they were in talks to do it for a time, and it never got greenlit, and I really am sad about it, because I think David Barry would have done a phenomenal job with it, and there was so many stories that Jamie was a crossover in, and I would have loved to see those play out. So that would have been what I wanted to see the most. I don't think they'll do it just because of the age that all these characters are now, and like a lot of the people that are in the novellas are from the main cast, and I think a lot of the main cast are like moving on from the show. But I think it would be interesting to get something about Master Raymond, but I don't know how they'd make that show, because he's like prehistoric. So how do you pick a time that you're following him around on? But I think like Jamie, like a younger Jamie going to France would be cool as well. He's only there for a little bit, but I think his adventures there are really neat. Yeah, I don't want to see any of the characters die on screen, but it's Outlander, so I feel like we're gonna get at least one that I know of. Oh my god, a dream sequence between Jamie and John. That's another thing, is like, aside from the John and Jamie of it all, Jamie has sight, and it's something that has been brought up in the show, but not as often as it's brought up in the books. And so I really hope they bring that back in, because it's such a fascinating part of his character. And so, yeah, I really hope that they include Jamie having the sight, because for him not being a time traveler, he does have sight, and I think that there's other characters in his family tree who have it. And I'll be curious, now that we're going to get his parents, like if they include anything like that. Because that would be kind of cool. For those who haven't read the book, so like the first time we see it in the show is in season 4, when Jamie kind of has like a dream into the future, and he asks Claire if Brianna has a birthmark on her neck. It's because he can see her as an adult in the future in her own time, and it's like a dream to him, and he can't tell if it's real. And then in season, I think it was the first part of season 7, like he has visions of Jemmy, and when Jemmy is at Lallybroch, he's kind of like communicating with Jamie, and Jamie can envision electric light, and he doesn't know how to describe it to Claire, and also a telephone with a wire connected to it, which are two things that obviously he would never have been exposed to, and Claire knows in the books she's never told him about. So he knows those things because he can see them in his dreams. And so that's a power that he has that the show hasn't really like fleshed out more. They've mentioned it a handful of times, but in the books it's kind of like a big deal to Claire, because in the books it's kind of like a big deal to Claire because spooks are. Beverly, which thing would you want the Cliff Notes version? I'm assuming it's Jamie's site. If I didn't answer it, let me know though. That's so nice. Your favorite show is my live. I appreciate that. Thank you for chiming in. I'm sure I'll save this and like splice it up and put some of the clips from it onto my page for people who have missed it, because we've talked about some good stuff. So thank you for tuning in. My battery is dying, so shortly I will be logging off here. Yeah, John and Jamie, I love them so deeply, individually and together. And also, again, like I mentioned, I would have loved to have had a Lord John series. Like when you watch the main show, you can tell that they have a very close relationship, and it's amplified even more if you read the novellas between them, because especially Scottish Prisoner, there's just so much more time when Jamie was in Ardsmuir, and also like in between some of the book moments that him and John, like their relationship strengthens. And so even though I'm really happy with how they depict it in the main series, if you know if you know when watching the show that off screen all of these other moments would have happened in the books, it just makes you love their friendship all the more, and also makes you love Lord John all the more because the novellas are in his point of view, so we actually get to know like his personality a lot more because he's the narrator. What am I most looking forward to seeing in Blood of My Blood? I talked about this a little earlier in the live, but there's a lot of things. But I think as I've done more research and like followed up on a lot of stuff from the book series, I'm very excited to see a lot of the Myrta scenes that are talked about in the main series, but we're actually going to get to see play out on screen. So like Myrta being in love with Ellen, and I think Diana at the premiere last night said that in the first episode we're going to get to see the boar hunt, and in the Outlander book the boar hunt is where Myrta kills the boar himself, and Colum gifts him like the tusks, and he has them made into bracelets that he gives to Ellen. And there's so many other little things that we find out throughout the book series that Myrta did for Ellen, and we're going to get to watch them play out on screen. So that part I'm excited about. Yes, I did see, he was saying last night that the showrunners told, he being Rory, the actor who's playing Myrta, they told him not to watch the main series so that his version of Myrta was like a fresh version of him. And he also said that his version of Myrta is much more like jolly and happy and optimistic about life, because all of the traumatic things that happened to him later obviously have not happened yet. So he's very different than how we meet him in Outlander. And that's going to be kind of cool because he will feel like two very different people. And I think it'll make it even more sad when you watch Myrta as an adult, when you see like what he was like before all of the traumatic things that happened to him. And show Myrta is inherently different because he lives longer than book Myrta. So that is very cool too, because we can give him a lot more context, I would say. What do I think of the possibility of Faith surviving? I talked about this a little earlier as well. I don't think that Jamie and Claire's daughter survived because I really think that would be like cheap storytelling. I wouldn't be surprised if they go the route where Claire's mother has another child in the past that happens to be named Faith, and her daughters are the ones that we meet in season 7, Jane and Fanny. I think that all signs kind of point to that being like a logical path for them right now. Because before you could play it off as a coincidence, but now Fanny knows a song from Claire's time, so you have to pay that off. No, Jeremy Irvine was not at the premiere. He just had, I think, twins, they were saying. So he hasn't been doing a lot of the promo because his wife just had some kids. Good night, Renee. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, so he wasn't there because he just had some babies for his first children, which is exciting. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen his answers to some questions about his character. So he's continuing to be a mystery by not being at the premiere, which is kind of adding to the suspense, I would say. It'll be cool too, because they were saying that the first episode is very Brian and Ellen, and the second episode is going to follow Julia and Henry. Will I go live for the premiere or afterwards? So I was saying this earlier, I am actually working all weekend that the show comes out. So I'm going to do my best to pump out some content for the 2 episodes, but I'm not going to be home. So it's going to be tricky for me. But yeah, if I have the time, I will do a live, because that's the quickest way for me to share my reaction. And then I'll probably do the like full-fledged videos like I normally do during the week afterwards, which bums me out. I'm also going to be in Scotland for part of the show. So that'll be interesting, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to use my Stars account when I'm in Scotland. So we'll see. Oh, thanks for joining, Carol. I'm glad you stumbled into it too. I haven't gone live in a while, so I'm glad people found it. A lot of my videos haven't really seemed to be getting a lot of views, and I feel like they're punishing me for not posting for a while, but it's fine. People will find it if they're meant to. Arlene, I am going with a friend of mine. This will be my 3rd time. Brad, I'm so happy I ended up on your For You page. You've asked so many great questions, so I'm so happy that we found each other. But Arlene, I'm going to Scotland. This will be my 3rd time there, and I'm bringing a friend who has never been before. And she has watched Outlander, but I would say she's not as big of a fan as I am. I have done Midhope Castle, and I've done all the places in Edinburgh, and I've done Dune Castle, which is Leoch, and Blackness Castle, which is one of the prisons from season 1. So I've done a lot of places from Outlander, but I haven't done the 4-day tour. So that might be another excuse for me to go back to my favorite place on earth. I'll go back to Scotland any day. I've never met the cast. No, Emily. It would be nice if I could. I've been in Edinburgh when Sam's been spotted in Edinburgh, but I did not see him there, which is kind of a bummer. Arlene said the 4-day tour is amazing. They do it all in a certain order, and the clothes is just breathtaking. I believe that. I went to in Edinburgh, there's a spot where they filmed the print shop, and that was really cool. Just everything in Scotland is so freaking beautiful. And I loved Inverness. Inverness was beautiful. I didn't get to Perth. Actually, maybe I did get to Perth. Maybe I drove through Perth. But yeah, I'm definitely a firm believer I will be back in Scotland many a time. So that will be something I'll have to make sure I do. Um, someone asked me about going on a second date. I would say, I don't know. That would catch me off guard, I'd say. I'd love to go, but it looks so cold and dark, and are the midgies really annoying? So, talking about Scotland, I have gone once in May and twice in August, September. And it's been beautiful weather when I've gone. When I went in May, I went for 10 days and I did like the whole Highlands and the Isle of Skye and everything. And it rained one time and it was at nighttime and it was beautiful and there were no midgies. When I went in September, I went by myself and it was beautiful and it did not rain and there were no midgies. So I would say if you go in either of those windows of time, it's not that cold. I would say it's super comfortable, especially if you're going to go hiking, and there are no midgies. I think in the height of summer is when they're the worst. And the days are also really long in those time frames and in the summertime. I do at some point definitely want to go like over the winter, just because I feel like that's how I'd get the most authentic experience of Scotland. Yes, you can hike with no experience. The one thing that I really enjoyed, so I brought hiking boots with me, and my friend and I think we ended up walking over 100 miles when we were in the Highlands and on Isle of Skye. There's no trees or anything. There are in Scotland, but a lot of the hikes that you'll go on, there's no trees, so you can just see everything for miles and miles and miles. And a lot of it is pretty easy terrain to navigate, but I can't say that that's like everywhere. Where we went, that was the case, and it was not that bad. And if you go to Edinburgh, if you want to hike up Arthur's Seat, like that's a pretty deceptively steep hike, but it's definitely doable. Like you could do that in your sneakers, and it would be a challenge, but you could do it. I think everyone should go to Scotland, regardless of if you're an Outlander fan or not. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. And everyone's very kind and very nice. But there's lots of tours you could go on if you did want to. So, I suggest you book a trip. My phone is dying, so if there's any other questions, I will answer them before I log off for the night. And I'll save this live and I'll splice it up and post some videos. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. I'm very excited as we get closer to do more of these and talk about the episodes and break them down. Oh, there's more people joining just as it's ending. Sure, I can include a clip about the Scotland information. That's easy to do, certainly. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. It's nice to actually converse with people in here as I do these. You know, obviously it's weird not having like faces to names, but there are a lot of people that I see your comments on my videos a lot, so it's nice to see you guys in here. And I've said this before, but literally anytime someone takes the time to watch my videos and takes the time to comment on the videos, it makes it very much worth it to me, and I really appreciate it. Oh, don't apologize. That's what the chat is for. It gets the conversations flowing. I have so much Outlander knowledge stuck in my head that it's nice to talk about it to people too. Because no one in my personal life is into it like me. Yeah, I don't know if everybody that's in the Outlander TikTok world has the same, it seems like everyone has the same experience where, like, especially book readers, if someone falls under the camp of being a book reader. Very few people seem to have people in their personal lives that they can discuss the books with. The show also seems to be like a lot of people's guilty pleasures. So I don't think they converse about it with a lot of people in their friendship groups or like their family. For me, I actually have a number of friends who watch it as well, so it's nice because I can talk to them about it, but they didn't read the books. So I'm like on another level of dissecting the episodes than them, and I feel like I annoy them when I start to analyze everything in such a deep way and they don't know what I'm talking about. So it's nice to come on here and talk to people who are just as interested. All right, well, if there's no other questions, my phone is gonna die, so I'm gonna log off. But thank you everyone who joined in. I am happy anyone came on to listen to me chat about Outlander and Blood of My Blood tonight. And I will do many more of them as the episodes air. And I will continue to make some more videos. If you have any other like specific questions that you'd like me to do a video on, feel free to leave a comment on any of my videos. I love when people ask questions I haven't thought of, and it makes me have to do some research. So yeah, good night, Carol. All right, everyone, have a good night. Let's see if I can figure out how to end this.